Yeah. All right.
Swimming with the sharks, baby.
So I'm sitting with Mark Manderson. Said that correctly?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that works. I'll respond to anything.
Yeah. So, co-founder, owner-operator of Pacific Shores Recovery,
Yeah, I've been doing it for 21 years. in
published
mental health.
author,
Yeah, that one's a little bit newer.
The Recovery Way. So tell me about this. Tell me about the book. I mean, how this began.
Well, the book. So it's funny when people ask, "Oh, how long did it take you to write a book?" I mean, the real answer is, well, 20 years.
Yeah. Right.
Of just being introduced to this. I tell people I was recruited into this field, and what I mean by recruited isn't by individuals. It was one of the days my family said, "Hey, you know what we do," and a lot of this is in the book. But I walked in on my aunt when I was, 8 years old, actually in the house where we're shooting right now,
Yeah.
of overdosing.
Oh, wow.
So I went and grabbed my mom and ended up reviving her, but it ended up mom asked her to leave, and then she actually died of an overdose just a few months later.
Oh, wow.
So I was introduced to drugs at a very, very young age.
How old were you?
Eight.
You were 8?
I was 8 years old when this happened. And so that's kind of where the story started. So growing up, I was like anti-drugs, anti-alcohol. I found brilliant ways to sedate the pain without that. So I thought I was kind of exempt from this whole lifestyle of making poor choices. So a lot of my friends in the program laugh and joke. They're like, "Dude, you're an idiot. Like, there's a fun part in the beginning of addiction. You missed the fun part. You went straight to the consequences of life just falling apart, becoming suicidal, like all the crazy stuff."
Yeah.
And so about every 3 to 6 months, I was doing commercial real estate back then out of college. And my dad would say, "Hey, do you want to come over and work with the family, helping people recover?" And at that time, it was like, no. Why would I want to do that? I'm doing commercial real estate. And in Orange County, it's different than everywhere else in the world. I mean, the commercial real estate was booming back then. And so, like every 3 months, he would ask, and literally one day, he says, "Well, why don't you pray about it?" I'm kind of like, all right, whatever. He's never asked that way before. No joke. I pray that night. The next day, like there was this fire that was planted inside, like in my chest, like my solar plex. I'm going like, what is this about? And I just had this vision of, you know what? I'm being called to this. Just go give it a try. I knew nothing about drugs or alcohol other than I felt like Mr. Mackey. Don't do drugs, okay?
Yeah.
Like that was the extent. And so I remember the next day I went to my boss and said, I'm giving my notice. I have no idea where this is going to go, but I feel this. Now it's purpose. I didn't know what it was back then, but I just felt this burning, and so started doing it. And when we started, like literally, it was a single page that just says, "I will not use." And then we had people. This was before there was outpatient. It was literally like Betty Ford, Hazleton, a few places, and they came to us for what we called sober living.
And what year was that?
2003, 2004,
Okay.
somewhere around there.
Okay.
Way back.
Yeah.
And so I'm just curious by nature. So I would just ask some of the people that are living, like, "Hey, where are you struggling?" And as we started learning, I started going out and talking to experts and reading and getting coaching and therapy and taking courses and certification and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Just from the desire to want to help people not have to go through what I went through as a kid.
Yeah.
And so 21 years later, now we do everything from detox services all the way to still sober living, and then even transitioning back home. We started a virtual program probably a year before COVID, and just like,
How's the virtual program work?
so there's two methods that people take. One method, which is probably the most applicable, is they go through our program, and then again, because I ask questions. I'm like the naive guy that will just keep asking questions and wanting to figure out why things work and how to make it better. And so we're finding clients did great in our 60, 90-day program. And then we'll go home and we check in and they're great for a little while. And then all of a sudden they start struggling again. Well, they go back to the exact environment. And so I just had this inclination again, and I go into it in my book. I call it my daily walk and talk, where I get divine direction from my creator. I just get to chill and do this thing. And I got this little download that said, what if you actually got people together online. There's this new thing called Zoom that I just found out about, and just poured into them a couple times a week. Just real world hot seats, what's going on, and then nothing's off limits. And so we created what's called the 5 foundational freedoms. It's 5 different foundations that we found, the people that did really well, that they would work on each day. And so we started developing this. And so as we would talk with the people all over the nation, we started finding amazing results. And then people getting 6 months and a year, and then a year and a half, and 2 years sober. And it was really because it was on the back of this virtual program of when they're in, the treatment bubble. It's like it is the easiest place to stay sober is in a setting where there's therapists, testing, high level accountability. It's this bubble, which is great to learn. But once you're out of that bubble and back in the real world, it can be really tough. So we wanted to help bridge that gap to get back to, how do you deal with your wife that you've been gone this time? You go back, you're like, sweetie, I feel so much better. I'm spiritually healed. And your wife's going, I'm still dealing with all the crap that you left.
Yeah.
And like how to have those conversations, which we do in treatment, but it's different of having a phone call, or they come over for a few sessions and then go back home. So it just really helped bridge that gap, and we found really good results with that. So that's for the people that are in our program. And then we opened it up and said, what if they don't have access to treatment or can't leave, or they went somewhere else? And so we typically have, I don't know, maybe anywhere from 10 to 20% never heard about us other than just from word on the street or a referral.
Yeah.
And they jump in and they all say the same thing. They're like, I had this vision, or not vision, but this understanding of what this online Zoom thing would be like. I thought it was going to be like a AA meeting on Zoom. So I was really hesitant. And it's different. I don't even know how to explain it to put the words. It's different than anything that our clients have experienced before online.
So on the virtual, do you have to, is it something with insurance? Is there like a alumni, or is it, how's?
Anything and everything.
Really?
So we look to meet the person with where they're at, and just to help them, family members, whatever's needed. So we also have an exclusive private group in Facebook as well, where it kind of coincides.
Okay.
So they're doing their daily post of what we call the 5 to Thrive, hitting the perfect 10 each day. And again, all stuff in the book.
So you said something. I was listening to this guy's name, Ed Milet. Have you heard of him?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So he says you are your rituals and habits.
Yep.
And as you know, for people that come in to a program, they are safe, right? Like you have all the accountability, everything that you just listed off, and then they go back home to the same environment. It is for such an extended amount of time that they have these certain behaviors that led them down this path.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, like the time frame? Maybe everyone's different, but there's like a certain, to reprogram that is going to be what goes into that, because they are safe in treatment. When they go back home or wherever they're going to go, what is something that people should do, or that you've seen the best results with people staying sober?
So accountability is huge.
Yeah.
So of having a safe place that people can still check in with zero judgment. So it's just literally we hold up the mirror.
Yeah.
How you doing? I'm struggling with this. Great. We look for vulnerability and truth.
Yeah.
The whole thing is when they're back home, it's like, look, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. If you show up and withhold that authentic part of you, I still have not figured out a way to actually reach that person.
Yeah.
What I've found is when a person comes in broken, like we just had one about a month ago. We do our check-ins, and we call it the 5 Ps. And we first check in, what was your peak, and what was your pit of the weekend? And one of the clients said, and you could just see it on her face, just broken, the guilt, the shame. She's like, I drank this weekend and I almost didn't show up. And so the biggest thing is the guilt and the shame we carry. And so in this safe space, we're able to say, okay, the decision has been made. Let's go ahead and break it down. Let's process it. What led to it? What were the thoughts? What was the event? What was the trigger? What were the emotions that were coming up? What were the stories connected to all of this that led to that type of old reaction? And so by having a safe place where I can show up and say, I screwed up, and everybody there goes, we still love you.
Yeah.
We're here for you. That is where we see people just flourish and change once they can step out of that suit of guilt and shame and even blame sometimes, and just say, here's where I am. I'm hurting. We'll jump in the pit, help them process, and show them how to get back to the peak.
So that's why, programs like AA and Smart Recovery, church, all those things are great, right?
Yeah, they're fantastic.
Yeah, interesting. So with you owning and being so involved with the program, I think, and maybe this is something that you can relate to, but owning these and being so involved um, sometimes can be, stressful. You are taking a lot of people's energy on. How do you go about your own rituals and habits to kind of show up to do what you do, which is amazing work, but it can be very taxing. It's a lot of thinking. And so, what are your rituals and habits that you go and do outside?
So this is the part that scares off most people. I am a psychopath when it comes to routine and consistency and
Mm,
commitment. So I share very openly and vulnerably. I tell people, look, I'm not smart. I'm more committed than I am smart.
mm,
And so what that means is I may not know the answers, but I'm committed to figuring it out. And then I kind of have this philosophy of I will be a guinea pig for things. If it works for me, then I take it to, I've got two different small groups of men. I call it my life team. I'll take it to them, run them through the framework. If it works, then I'll bring it into the center
mm.
and then start to do some case studies for a few years, see what happens, and then we do a full blown launch.
Wow.
So um, first, you got to learn. So what I do is I learned a system, which we created the 5 foundational freedoms. I'll get into that in just a minute. Once you learn it, then you got to live it.
Mm,
Once you start living it, you got to learn how to lean into it, because a lot of time people confuse commitment for convenience.
mm,
They'll say, "Hey, I'm all about this," and then as soon as life starts smacking you in the face, it's not convenient, so the commitment drops.
mm,
So by actually leaning into that, which you learn it, then you live it, then you lean into it, then you can begin to lead.
mm,
So I have a morning ritual. Most people don't know this. I wake up, like, my emotional gravity is depression and fear. I wake up some mornings. Yesterday was actually, today, what's today? Friday. Today was a perfect example. Woke up with just fear, um, anxiety, feeling down, kind of like I don't want to live today,
mm,
like meaning getting out of bed. Um, and I used to ask why and try to fight that. And what I've learned is, instead of asking why and trying to fight my emotional gravity, what if I found a way to be able to find fuel? What I mean by that is, let's say you have a car, and every morning you wake up, you're ready to go, but you're out of gas. Instead of screaming at the car and being like, "Why am I out of gas every morning?" Go, "Oh, what if I just fill the tank? So what if I build a gas station at my house, and when I wake up, for some reason, who knows, there's no fuel in the car, and I just fuel it up, and then I'm able to go throughout the day. And then tomorrow I'll wake up. Sometimes there's a little fuel. A lot of times there's no fuel, and I just fill it up." So I don't do it in this order. I have a certain order that I do it in, and it changes about every 6 to 9 months.
mm,
But the first four F's sit on the foundation of the fifth. So first one's fitness. So fitness and health. I make sure that I'm working out and moving every single day. The science behind it is it releases the feel-good chemicals in your brain. You get the serotonin, the longer-lasting effects. Also, when you are fit and your body is able to serve you, you don't get fatigued as fast. Your capacity expands, and you can take on so much more of
mm,
what we get when people are trying to just emotionally dump on us. Of being a safe space and be like, "Yeah, bring it,
mm.
let's go." So that's the fitness, and then also what you fuel your body. So as I'm getting older, it wasn't this way about 20 years ago, but as I'm getting older, the supplementation is a huge part, making sure I'm getting my daily greens and all the macros and different things.
Yeah.
So that's on the fitness and health level. And again, I'm just talking surface
Yeah,
right
for
now.
sure.
Then we look at faith. What is my conversation with my creator? And the beautiful thing about this framework is it doesn't matter what religion you subscribe to, or if you don't, faith is so much different than fear.
Mm,
And so with faith, it's, how do I communicate with my creator, the universe, for me, God, Jesus, whatever it is for each person. So each day I meditate, prayer, whatever you want to call it. You spend time in solitude.
mm,
And then the other is reading and writing actual scripture. So this year I'm reading the Bible. Last year it was the Bhagavad Gita a little bit, if I pronounced that correctly. So it's just reading different things that will help open the spirituality source for your connection with your creator.
mm.
Third thing is family and friends. And actually, I don't know if I've ever shared this with you. Can we be totally open?
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
please.
So I discovered something. It was when Dustin passed.
Mm.
So at his memorial, I heard all these guys that we had worked together and helped these guys get sober together that shared, and I was bawling hearing what they were sharing. And it was beautiful. And I remember going up to, I think, three specific individuals. I was crying, they were crying. I said, that was beautiful.
Mm.
And I asked, I said, did you ever share that with them? And not a single person said yes. Everyone said, I wish I would have shared that. Like, he knew how I felt, but it was so much different.
Yeah.
And I still, it's not on this phone. It's on like an old version of a phone, but I still have the recording. I walked out. You remember it was like 109 degrees.
Yeah.
It was so hot. I walked out sweating, bawling, and I just recorded. And your brother's final gift to me that after he had passed was what I call the message of gratitude. I call it the living eulogy. So I walked, and that's part of what created some of this is I said, I don't ever want to go another day without letting people know what I think about them, how I love them, what I appreciate, what I honor. And so I just started letting people know each day. I picked two people I acknowledge and I appreciate. And I'll send either a text, a video of just saying, hey, man, you popped into my mind. You know, a couple weeks ago we grabbed breakfast. Like one guy the other day said, dude, you opened up about some stuff that is just like permeated in my heart. And I just wanted you to know I'm thinking about you. I'm praying about you. I feel so much closer that you share that to me, and I have so much respect for you. And it's genuine. I sent that. It's a one-way transaction. I just send it and keep going. But what I started finding is people sending it back like, hey, I got a lot from that too.
Yeah.
And so with family and friends, it is just making a daily deposit of that living eulogy and just letting people know what you think about them, how you care about them. And that helped expand my capacity of love like 100-fold.
Yeah.
My relationship with my wife is deepened, with my parents, my kids, our employees. It is amazing. So that is a gift that I don't know if I ever shared that with you, but
No.
walking out of hearing that, I thought, I want every day people to know. So if it's my final day today, they know how much I love them and care about them and how they've impacted me in my life.
Yeah. And to get it, it was amazing. His turnout was people up in the rafters.
That was one of the most beautiful things too, is
Jeez.
how many people that your brother affected and just had that ripple effect on.
Yeah.
And that literally changed the course of their lives just because of the bright light that he was.
Yeah. That's amazing.
So that's family and faith. Number 4 is finances. So we started seeing, I mean, it takes money to make money and to live a life. And one of the aspects I learned is we are all born into this world with exact same knowledge. Nothing.
Yeah.
And seeing these individuals who, like, have you seen Elon Musk's documentary on Netflix?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you like the fact that, and I hope I remember correctly, but the fact that he goes, hey, NASA's not sending people anymore up to space. I think we can figure this out. I don't know anything about rockets. I'm gonna buy a couple books and read it.
Yeah.
Wait, what? SpaceX was founded
Yeah.
because a guy said, I want to read some books and says this is fascinating, and then started a company.
Yeah.
So what I found is those people that just continue to expand are getting better at their trade every single day. So I either read a book or take a course or whatever it is each day on addiction or psychology, something that I can be used to reach people at a deeper level or expand the capacity of how we're able to help our clients.
Yeah.
And then all those 4 sit on the foundation of feelings. And so I do my daily walk and talk, which I shared, but I have a emotional processing tool. It's like having a therapist and sponsor in your pocket that knows you because they use your language and call you on your own BS.
Yeah.
And you can BS everybody in this world but yourself. And so it takes you through a framework by asking questions, and it just basically kind of goes through, what are you triggered about, what's going on, where are you hurting, where's the pain, what's the unmet need, what's your story behind this that's driving this, what are different perspectives. And after my walk, like this morning, I was bawling in just gratitude of going through a process of just self-forgiveness.
Yeah.
There's some things that apparently were still in there.
Yeah.
And it popped up, and just loving myself and feeling love for my creator that led to this. So that's the foundation of it all.
So I was doing a group about what you just said is kind of going into, we're talking about fear and being vulnerable. And we're kind of going into what people can be afraid of, from heights to this, to public speaking, whatever, all the typical stuff. But the people we're very nervous of going inward, to go into those things that you said, those things that you've done. And it ended up being pretty amazing, because going inwards, like you feel about something and you have that energy, that yucky, like, oh, but that is a great signal. You're like, ooh, there's something, I got to go check that out.
Yeah.
And kind of built a process through my journal of how I can help people kind of navigate that. But that's something that what we were also bringing up yesterday was, and it's kind of, I couldn't really go on to it because they're very new and I just didn't want to go too far with them. But you just brought something up now, especially with how much experience and literature you probably have, written or read. So around addiction. So someone, for instance, used me. Maybe I used to think I was a unicorn. So I struggled with heroin for a long time, and then eventually, after years, I didn't like the fact that I would go into these rooms, and people would tell me what I was capable of. You have a drink, you break out in handcuffs, and you all this. I'm like, and I didn't like all of this stuff, and I was like, wait, so I kind of left that I respect so many things about it,
Yeah.
but I was so much more, and I just felt it, so I went off on my own. And over time, I was one of these people that was able to go and have a cocktail, right?
Yeah.
I don't like drinking because it just doesn't work for me, but I was. But I did a lot of work on myself for years. And then I got to a point to where I didn't break out in handcuffs, right? But it was after what 6+ years, and kind of went off my own path. And then I've met a lot of other people that have the very similar experience,
Yeah.
but can't talk about it because may get cast a lot of judgment or whatever it may be. I live a pretty healthy lifestyle, so yet I don't allow that stuff into me because I have one cocktail and I wake up in the morning. I'm like, oh man, I'm not sharp. My energy sucks, so that don't work. But what are your thoughts around that? Because like I haven't been able to talk to too many people. I've talked to some guys that work with me in the past, and certain physicians and psychologists and stuff like that. And but what are your thoughts around addiction? And I think addiction with substances. I think
Yeah.
addiction is very from shopping to you name it. What is your thoughts?
Addiction's part of life. That's where a lot of people, and that's one of the reasons why, before we set all this up, you were asking about why writing the book. There's still, and it's not nearly as bad as it was like 15, 20 years
Do you
ago.
need a hat?
No, I'm good.
You sure?
Yeah. Let's keep rolling. But it's amazing because there's still a stigma. And I think it's because of the stigma that people will withhold and continue living. We call it the land of the lies because, again, of the guilt and the shame. So I don't have any scientific proof. I'm not a doctor or a scientist, but this is my personal belief.
Yeah.
There's a spectrum of addiction. I've seen there's so many things in life that everything has spectrums. And so I've seen people where it's like even with the best help, they still go all the way to the end and they end up dying from this progressive disease. And there's other people. I remember one of the guys I went to high school with, everybody knew he was the guy doing coke every single weekend. And then he had some life stuff happen. His family said, hey, you need to stop and step up to help out with the family. He's like, oh, okay. And just stopped. And people are like, wait, what? And everything in between. So the part that is so difficult with this, especially in the treatment realm, is because when a person hears, wait, you still may be able to drink, we all think we're the unicorn.
Mm-hmm.
We all go, oh, then I must be one of those people that can, and it's going to be okay. I like removing right and wrong.
Mm.
And what it comes down to is if I am looking for external devices to fill something that I don't know how to fill internally, and I don't mean to discount it, but it's irrelevant what the drug of choice is, whether it is heroin, alcohol, sex, gambling. I mean, we've seen so many different forms of coping. I think the biggest tragedy this day and age is we are somehow like indoctrinated to think that there is something or someone that is put on this earth to fulfill us. And it's like nobody was put on this earth to make you happy or fulfill your unmet needs. That's an inside job. And the irony is when I don't understand that, I live from a place of scarcity. I'm trying to grab and pull anything I can, and it's out of this fear. When I have this understanding of this, it's I mean, like love and peace is infinite.
Mm.
When I love myself and I'm able to find that inner peace, I can just continue to give it no matter what. And the thing that I've found in my journey is when I struggled with loving myself, I was I was trying to grasp for love. And I don't know if you remember back in the dating days, but when you find that girl who's needy, love me, come here, you're like, oh gosh, that's so unattractive. But when a person's like, whether you love me or not, doesn't matter. I love myself. Come along for the ride if you want. You're like, oh, that's so hot.
Mm.
And then once I started living this way, it's like all of a sudden friends are like, bro, I love you, man. Just there's something different about you now. I'm like, wow. So when I love myself unconditionally, I still make so many mistakes.
Yeah.
But just by owning it and being like, hey guys, I made this mistake, people are like, okay, why are you telling me? Because I don't want anybody to have to find this out.
Yeah.
I want to call myself
Yeah, yeah.
out. And it's such a freeing way to live. And it's funny. I was running a group on Wednesday and we kind of got into self-love and self-forgiveness. And one of the clients was like, oh, it's like Oprah, you get my love, you get my love, like
You
just
get
throwing
my
it out.
love.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's exactly how it is. When I don't love myself,
Yeah.
I am looking to anything that can give it to me.
Mm. Yeah, on that topic of love too, even the most powerful thing I've had is when people do some pretty harsh things to me in life. But if I can generally go back, me knowing and working with a lot of different humans, that I can like, well, I look at them either they learn that or that was a projection of how they were raised. I can go back further, and then all I do, I just if I send love to them, you know what? Hey, it's all love, and I
Yep.
don't have that. I don't have that resentment. And you're lighter, and you were saying too when you are on the topic of these things is with talking about substances. I think we have amazing drugs that we naturally produce,
Yeah. It's the
but
world's best pharmacy right here.
but you just have to earn them. Like you go for a run, man, you get a great little buzz running, going and lifting, pushing past these physical fears or whatever this may be. You can go in public speak and you're afraid of it, but the drugs afterwards, you did this thing that you were so afraid of and you did it. And like I was listening to Joe Dispenza's,
Oh yeah.
and he was talking. You are your, what is it? You have a thought which triggers an emotion, which triggers an action.
hmm
And I think what I've seen is people's action when they feel this way, they are used to using substance. Oh, I'm feeling uncomfortable. I know my brain knows to go and use. That's how I do it. But through repetition, and correct me if I'm wrong, but through repetition of doing these other things, that you kind of start to reprogram yourself. Like, all right, when I feel this way, I go out and do something active, or I go out, I write, but I have these healthy behaviors. But at first, it's really hard and foreign. Like, I have so many years going, I feel this certain way, I go out and use. But what do you see with people that make that shift? And is it very few and far between that can kind of go and make that shift to where substances are no longer part of their coping mechanism,
Yeah. No,
or does it they stop
anybody
that and
can
go
do
to
it.
something else, shopping?
Well, and that's what we see is if the person doesn't do the core work, all they do is they might not use heroin, but then they turn to alcohol.
Yeah.
They might not use alcohol, they turn to sex. And so if I am not understanding what is this core unmet need, so what you're sharing dispense of here's the event, stimulus or trigger that triggers off a thought process that releases these emotions, this chemical balance, and then it goes to action. I call it reaction when I'm in that phase.
Yeah.
What a lot of people miss is the thoughts is the tip of the iceberg. It's stories, it's the meanings we attach to those thoughts. That's what drives behavior. So, like you were talking about, when people that have hurt you, hurt people hurt people. Healthy people don't go around hurting other people.
Yeah.
So anytime a person is reacting or hurting, that is the part where, and again, this is Dr. Seligman's work, but there's 3 P's. We tend to think it's personal. Like, oh, why are they this way to me? It must be me. I must be broken, whatever it is. We tend to think it's permanent. I'll never be lovable. I'll never be good enough. And it's literally all because of what happened as we were growing up. What this does is this trains the brain to actually link every experience that even looks something like this, every memory, unconscious from the very first memory all the way to present, it attaches the meaning. That's why we can go ahead and if you hear a car backfire, I've never been to war, so I might be like, oh man, that sounds like number 3 is a little bit off. They need to go get their timing set. Where if we're with one of our veterans, we do a lot of work with veterans, they will hit the ground, they go into PTSD, and it's like, same noise, 2 different reactions. Why is that? Well, because of what has happened in the past, all these memories, and people think memories are like linear. you take all five senses and it compacts them. So this is what our core memories are. So this is why sometimes sense is a huge one. It can trigger off memories, sight, sound. So when all this hits, it releases it unconsciously, and this is what creates that reaction.
Wow.
So to answer your question, is can anybody do this? Everybody can recover. That's the part, again, why one of the reasons why I wrote this book is I just saw this number the other day. I might be a little off, but it was something like 107,600 or something like that. It was over 100,000 people die every day in America related to some form of alcohol or drugs or addiction.
Wow.
And I'm going, I mean, we are a small facility. We are family owned and operated. We will never become one of these big people that just, it's like, I want to help people heal. If they're able to do it in 30 to 60 days, great. If it takes them a little longer because they're still learning how to make these connections
Yeah.
and these commitments. And so it's incredible to see how fast a person, once they make the decision and say, I trust the process, I submit to the process, and I do the daily work, you begin to retrain and rewire the brain. And that's what leads to living a complete different way, where when you deal with the core issues, and the two primary fears of every human being that walks the earth is, what if they find out I'm not good enough? And what if they find out I'm not lovable? Those are two umbrellas of all the insecurities. So when I can start to address that and learn how to say, no matter what I do, I'm going to be good enough for me. When I make mistakes, I'm not a bad person. I just screwed up.
Yeah.
How do I make it right? And how do I own it? And when I don't feel lovable, to be able to love myself enough. So if I'm in a relationship saying, hey, I'm finding that when you talk to me this way, I feel disconnected and I don't feel loved in that moment. Can we try talking differently to each other? And if they say yes, great. If they say no, well, that's okay. I love myself so much. And then as you raise your standard, water seeks its own level. So that's why you rarely see incredibly healthy people with unhealthy people. So when we're unhealthy, as we start getting healthier, it's like, oh, I'm attracting different people now.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, I was just talking about that's perfect. I was just talking about this yesterday. When you start kind of pinpointing these little going inward and working on these little yucky parts of yourself, and then you start to walk the earth a little bit lighter, amazing things happen. And I've seen myself in dark times through a lot of the things that I've gone through. Just, oh man, like, and trudging where it's been so hard, from my dad to my brother to on the business. Never really got to it with relationships. I was never, like, I loved all the girls, but I just never was that guy. I was like, oh, I have a great time by myself. But, I saw when I was in those moments what type of phone calls were coming in. And I saw what type of people that were, it was really weird. And then once I started to get lighter and work on these things, and all of a sudden, the opportunities, the phone calls were different, the people I interacted with was so different, apples and oranges. It was amazing to feel. So I'd consider you a high achiever, I think, because you not only do you own Pacific Shores and operate it and run groups and publish books and all these things. Outside of that, you've been in a rock band.
Yeah.
I wish I had a photo. You're gonna get me a photo.
Yeah, I get you. I'll get you photos. I think we have like our old CD. I'll drudge one up to send to you.
Yeah, because
people are like, "What are CDs, man? What's this guy talking about?"
Well, I tend to bring you up in conversation because I have so much respect for you, man, and I know what a lot of the things that you've done, and I try to go and push my boundaries in so many different ways, and I respect when I see other people doing it, and I know putting a book together is really tough. Getting it all the way to the end was just like a really huge challenge. But on the physical thing, like you do, what is it? Are you doing triathlons? Are you doing?
I did before I had back surgery a few years ago.
Okay, what were you? Was it triathlons?
The very small ones. I've never done a full
Like
the big dogs. Yeah, like sprints, Olympics, just the smaller stuff.
Yeah.
To get the trophy and hang it on the wall, show the kids.
So what outside of like what is something else? Either either with work or outside of work, something that gets you excited to like something like. Do you have kind of going backwards? Do you put these things out in the future and you have these certain projects or these things, work or not work, that you can get excited and look forward to?
Yeah.
And how do you do it?
Yeah. So I don't want to miss the opportunity because whoever's watching this
Yeah.
is something that we do. So we do a lot of shadow work.
Okay.
And language is such a big part. The reason why addiction is so prevalent is because people are afraid of their dark side.
Mm.
And again, meaning attachment. For some reason, we tend to think the darkness, the dark times, we label it bad. And it's because of these labels that actually continue to influence trying to sedate or ignore them.
Mm.
I, without what you've been through, you would not be doing any of this right now.
Mm.
Like, and I may get a little emotional. I'm an emotional guy, so I'm totally fine
Me
with
too.
it. But the thing is looking back at some of the most horrific and traumatic moments of my life at the time didn't make sense. But I would not be doing this if I didn't walk in on my Aunt Odine.
Yeah.
The things that have happened to me actually help shape and form me. Pretty interesting Freudian slip of shame, because back then I used to identify it as shame. As we learn how to actually, and this is where self-love and forgiveness comes, where we can meet the ugliest part of us. I'm talking the part that we keep hidden in the closet that we don't want anyone to know. At our center, we call it the addict self. And I can actually take the addict self and love that part and say, I love you. Like, I forgive you. You actually protected me through so much of life. I've never thanked you for that. And this is the part that blows most people's minds. And so we actually go through a process. But as we do this, we learn to love that dark side of us, because that dark side is what's pushing this consistent scarcity of, I need to be loved, but what if they find out about my dark side? So as we learn how to love that, now I can have conversations when the dark side comes up. I'm not owned by it anymore. I'm able to, as weird as it sounds, actually love it and hug it and thank it for protecting me when I was younger. And now that I'm older, I can keep us safe and protect us, and then find out, what is it that you're needing from me today?
Yeah.
And the dark side goes, I just need to know that even though we don't know what's going to happen, I'm scared as all hell, that you'll still be here for me. And it's like, yeah, buddy, I got you. You took care of me as a kid. I'm taking care of you for the rest of the life. So I didn't want to
No.
blow over that, because that's why most people continue to sedate, because of the guilt and the shame, and they try to push off going through the pit of pain and that dark side. But it's going through the darkness on the other side that provides the light,
Yeah.
because you can't have light without darkness.
It's true. No, I'm glad you went back on that, because with how you handle yourself during these challenging times, I think in the beginning when you first start to go through really hard things, you don't, it kind of hits you off guard, and you don't expect some of these things, so you don't really have the opportunity to really handle them very appropriately, or you just,
You're just
it's
in
one
survival.
thing. Yeah, it's one thing knowing, right? I know people that know everything. They know, tell them about diet and all this stuff, whatever. I know people that, but yet doing is a whole other thing. But I knew
So
a whole
true.
bunch of stuff
Yeah.
before these traumatic things happened. But when it hit me, I'm like,
Yeah.
the first time I was like, well, I don't really know how to handle this.
Yep.
Then another big thing happened. I'm getting a little bit better, and I know in the future, parents are going to pass, friends are, people are going to get sick. Business and entrepreneurship is a hell of a freaking ride.
Yeah.
But you can start to look at these things that are coming, or you're like, hey, wow, this event just happened. Let me handle this appropriately.
Well, and that's the part you go back to. You go, I handled it how I needed to handle it back then, because I
Yeah.
had knowledge but didn't. So I found a very effective way to numb everything out and not have to feel.
Yeah.
So instead of like suppressing that part, that's where we go, wow, I'm brilliant. I can find the fastest, cheapest way to meet the need of stuffing down the pain and seeking the pleasure. And in the beginning, it works phenomenally.
Yeah.
The problem is when I go the easy route, it creates such a difficult life. So this is why one of the things we go in our treatment center is how to make the difficult decisions to have the easy life versus the easy decisions to have the difficult life.
Yeah. So with that, like I asked yesterday in this group, and it was actually really fun and interesting, because a lot of the clients that were in there they came from the different parts of the country, and they've just been in addiction and out of prison for a long time. And I asked them, I'm like, do you guys have any hobbies? Like, what are you looking forward to after this new chapter, this new season of life? Like, what kind of fun or hobbies or things? And 80% of them didn't know what type of hobbies or things to do. How important are finding hobbies and fun a part of addiction and mental health?
So this is one of the biggest things that people miss is this whole thing, purpose or calling.
Mm.
I know for me, I didn't know for the longest time, and I was terrified I'd make the wrong decision. Like, what if you choose the wrong purpose in life?
Mm.
And I had this mentor when I was younger. He was actually my gym buddy. He was in his 60s, like better shape than me when I was in my late teens and early 20s.
And how old was he? 60?
He was in his 60s.
Yeah.
And so as we're working out, I just got to know him. We just kind of hit it off. And I remember looking at him and I'm like, dude, this guy has so much like just life and world knowledge. So I asked him like, hey, Bill, I'm like, dude, how did you know all this stuff? And he goes, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you've lived so many lives. He's like, oh yeah. He's like, purpose is seasonal, man.
Mm.
He's like, I wanted to be a football coach. So I was a football coach for like 15 years, loved it. And then my purpose changed. And then I went ahead and I started touring the world, just sailing around the world in a sailboat. It was to go meet people and to work on boats. So I did that. And he's like, I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. It'll be awesome when I figure it out. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And so that like little seed just germinated with me of as purpose can be seasonal. Now I'm in a 20 plus year season of my purpose. I have two
Yeah.
purposes in life. In this season, we'll see if it lasts another 20 years or 200 years, who knows? But it's helping people heal at the core, like the spiritual level. Like I'm talking generational change, not just, okay, you're not using it anymore, high five, good luck. But what you're talking about, unmet needs of purpose, of passion, of how to produce and different things. And then the other one is my family.
Mm.
My wife, my two kids, of being a leader, preparing them for life, providing for them, and protecting them.
Yeah.
And so purpose is such a huge thing. I actually started teaching this, gosh, I don't know, maybe just a few years ago. It's still relatively new, but so many people don't know their purpose.
That's
And
true.
when you don't have a purpose, I mean, it's biblical. Without a vision, people perish.
Yeah.
And so if I don't know what my purpose is, I'm going to keep floundering and just try to survive or barely make it through, and we sedate.
How do you find your purpose? How does one find that?
It's right here. No, I'm kidding.
You got
So I call it the four Kingsmen. So the first thing we start looking at is without purpose, you have to have clarity. So if you're not clear on what you're wanting, it is, I mean, my experience is it's impossible to find the purpose, the calling, the meaning of life. So as I start getting clear on what it is that I'm wanting, so clarity is the first step. When I am super clear on something, then I have certainty.
Well, breaking that down, like, so going to get clarity instead of just thinking, like, going more than that, like, what is a physical thing? Just where would are they sitting having coffee? Are they writing about this? Are they going out meeting a mentor, paying for a coach? Like, what is something to initially, like, an actual?
So, and that's the process that we actually take them through
Yeah.
during their time in treatment, is to find out, because actually walking, and this is something that I caught on one of the podcasts that you did, is you talked about, and I so agree with it, is what if I just say hello to people?
Mm.
Like if I just allow my spirit just to be like, hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
And no joke, just walking and being out, you say hey to people, the conversations find you that need to find you.
People are messengers.
Oh, it's a beautiful thing. So with clarity, we actually take them through this process of what that looks like for them. And the biggest thing is almost everybody is looking to get permission.
So true.
And they're looking externally, and it's kind of like,
So true.
if you need permission, here it is. Give yourself permission. And then as we go through the process, and again, like for this, we're just the tip of the iceberg. But as we do that, people are like, I have been looking my whole life to get permission to go to this school, or to go do this, or to go skydiving, or whatever it is. And it's kind of like, now that you give yourself permission, you're clear, like, these are some things that I want to try. What if it doesn't work? Well, then it's a very short season of your purpose. And then when you get to the end of it, you go, oh, that's not my purpose for this next season. So of just being so free, the clarity, and then the clarity brings certainty. So many people have doubt and uncertainty, and that controls their life. That's why we keep going back to the cycles of just barely surviving, of sedating. So with the clarity breeds the certainty. When I'm certain, then I can start taking the actions. And the third C is consistency. If I am not consistent in my actions, the certainty comes and goes, the clarity comes and goes. So by actually diving into these, so there's the three C's. The fourth C is, once I'm doing what I know I need to do consistently, then I begin to create the future that I'm looking for. Then I create the reality that I want. And that's the part where I think you said the limits. And my uncle, actually my mom's uncle, I still call him Uncle Ralph. But before he passed, one of the things that he taught me is he goes, you know how people say think outside of the box? I'm like, yeah, that's so good. He goes, Mark, there is no box.
Mm.
And I was like, what? He's like, everybody makes their own boxes. There's no box. Like once you learn this as a fundamental truth, not just most people think logically and that screws them up. But when you learn to mix logic with the heart, with love, and you put the two congruently, that is where you start finding this purpose. That's where you get the clarity, the certainty, the consistency, the creation, where you get to create an epic journal that is just this beautiful thing that's helping, I don't know how many thousands and tens of thousands of people,
Yeah.
of a center that is actually changing, like genealogy of great granddaddy was an alcoholic, great grandpa was, grandpa was, dad was, I am, but I am choosing to change the lineage for my sons. And then literally it takes one person's decision to change.
Yeah. What's going on there? Hey, can you keep it down, buddy? No. That's so true. Going back from generations
Mm-hmm.
is a real thing.
So this is something 5 years ago, we had a guy who came through our center. And actually, I just met with him. He just did a 5-year follow-up case study for us of life is phenomenal. But he was the one that actually opened me up to this. He said, I'm from a small town in Northern California. Everybody knows our last name. It's a pretty recognizable last name. Great-great-granddaddy was the town drunk and thief. Grandpa was, dad was, he was. And so at about 6 months, 6-month follow-up, he said, I'm slowly changing it. I'm owning the wreckage. I'm fixing stuff. After a year, he goes, it's pretty cool. People are looking at my kids differently. 3-year check-in, he goes, I have changed what our last name means in this town. Like it ends with me, and he goes, Mark, what you guys did at Pacific Shores for me, it has changed my genealogy moving forward. My sons will and I was like, look at goosebumps,
Yeah,
like
it's real.
goosebumps of sitting there going, I've only been focusing on the client that's with us and the immediate family. I never once thought, how are we making and helping these people heal internally for generational change?
Wow. Isn't that wild? And how many thousands of people that have gone through your program too? Gosh.
And the key is the consistency of doing the work, because I would love to say everybody that comes through, we figured it out. But the issue is it's the consistency and the commitment.
Yeah.
Those that do the work, we just did, I think it was a 13-year follow-up with one of the guys, still doing the daily work, owns his own business, married, kids, like just crushing life.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes. I see other guys, hey, how you doing? Struggling. Are you still doing the work? You still hitting your 5 to thrive? No, man, I stopped. And I'm like, for some reason, the emotional work is not as tangential as everything else.
Mm.
So I'll ask our clients, I'll say, hey, if you stop showing up at your job for a month and you show up on the 1st for payday, you say, okay, I'm here for my pay. What would your boss tell you?
Mm.
What do you think? What would the boss say? If like, hey, I'm here for my pay.
I mean, it depends what type of boss. I don't know.
He'd be like, great, you haven't worked the last 30 days.
Oh, if you haven't worked.
Yeah, there was no
Oh.
compensation because you
Yeah.
didn't show up.
Yeah.
Like, people understand that. I show up, I do the work, I get paid. There's this beautiful thing. Every 2 weeks I go to work, I look at my bank account, there's money in there. I get paid. The problem is they don't do the work emotionally. They don't do the 5 foundational freedoms and the 4 codes. They don't do the work and they expect the result.
Mm.
Then there's this expectation of I'm owed something. And I heard this the other day that just, I'm like, this is so good. I'm going to steal it. I don't know who said it, but it's not mine. They said expectations are premeditated resentment. And when I heard that, I thought, wow.
Well said.
So if I go through life feeling entitled to certain things, I'm missing out.
Yeah.
If I go through life of just going, I'm going to share love, this is awesome. Have you jumped out of the helicopter,
Yeah.
by the way? Oh, that's on my bucket list. I've done Table Mountain, South Africa,
Yeah.
jumped out of a plane here, different places, but still no helicopter. But as we start to recognize this is how we start getting the change.
Yeah. Gosh, man, you touched on so many amazing things, I think. I mean, there's a guy named Miyamoto Musashi. You heard of him? He has a
Is
book.
that the water guy?
Yeah, Book of Five Rings. He was a samurai from
Okay, no, I'm thinking of someone else.
1500s. Ooh, I don't want to mess. Maybe 1600s. And it's a really short read, but he was a samurai, like a lone wolf, and killed like 70 people in one-on-one combat. But it's all about swordsmanship and everything. And he's like, in order to be the best swordsmanship, you have to understand poetry and art and all of this whole recipe of things that goes into actually being that. and being that great at something. But he has a quote. It says, "Once you understand the way broadly, you will see it in all things."
Mm.
So once you understand how to create something and how to manage something, and have it go from an idea to reality, and through doing that multiple times, no matter what it is, you can kind of start. There is a fundamental process for everything, right? I mean,
Mhm.
from going from an idea of writing a book to now, you're like, oh wow, I know this whole process now. I could probably do this again,
Yeah.
you know? And then with working through any trauma, I think that's an amazing, amazing topic is watching people and doing this line of work. And you say like finding your purpose. And I going back to that, I've known a fair amount of people that don't know, and I'm so grateful to know. And I have been in this field of work almost 10 years of working with people and trying to help where I can. And I've went off into other paths. I don't know, universe or whatever, something, my spirit, myself, it didn't work. I went out there and I turned down huge opportunities because in order for me to get and do something and make something great, I have to be excited. I'm just like that. I have to if I have to genuinely love what I'm doing, and I will do so dang good. When it's outside of like helping people heal and see how amazing and beautiful life is, there's nothing like that will never go away. I went out and tested the waters, and I'm like, no, I love this
Yeah.
because it's one, it helps me. Two, it's just I'm so grateful to know and define what that is, and it's never going away.
Yeah.
I could say that because I love it, man.
This is the real drug. The real drug is getting to actually help another soul find themselves in a way that they had no idea they were capable of.
Yeah, because you find it in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, hey, I'm no freaking mad scientist or any genius. Like, for me, I got like a sixth grade education. I was talking to this group yesterday. I'm like, you guys, like, I could be pretty relatable here. I just did things, and it's not lack of knowledge. It's all on Google. Go on ChatGPT.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Go on YouTube. Anything is all it's right there. But it's taking that leap for everyone. I love being around and talking with people in general. I'll talk to whatever. I have somehow a gift of just going and sparking conversation, and people just end up talking, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I was down in Baja. This guy, I was just about to go out and dive with these whale sharks,
So cool.
and there was this guy there. He had a big orange beard, yellow glasses like with Fear and Loathing, those
Oh
things.
yeah.
And he had this little mirror coming off the side. I didn't know it was for a bike, but I'm like, "What's up, man? Like, what's going on with these shades?" And he's like, "Oh man, I rode my bike, here." I'm like, "Well, how far?" He's like, "Well, I actually rode from Boston to Alaska, and then I rode all the way down to the tip of Baja, and now now he's down in South America." But just I get to hear these amazing stories just from simply saying hi,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I have a thing that I think is so useful to a lot of people for them to learn. At first, to going talking to a stranger is really scary for people. And like we get so wrapped up in our own self, and it's
Yeah.
this whole one love, this whole thing. People like forget about that, and they're scared to go and talk to people. Like people are so grateful when you just go up and say hi to them, and it will probably be the highlight of their day, maybe.
The world is a mirror, not a window.
It is.
And so, I mean, you hit it so on is the funny thing, and I could still remember this, and by no means have I perfected any of this. I still fail daily, but of going into conversation and you're running through your own narrative and all the insecurities. So you're disconnected from this connection of another person because you're in your head of your insecurities. And the irony is, it took me so long to figure this out. They're in their own insecurities, and it's like two people that are missing each other.
Yeah.
So the beautiful thing is as I continue to expose these insecurities and do the work daily with the 5 foundations, the 5 to thrive every morning, still do it. I said I did this morning.
Yeah.
You're exposing your insecurities. You're learning how to meet those. So in conversations like this, it's just being with it with another spirit, like a bond brother, man.
Yeah.
I've shared this
For
with
sure.
you. I still remember the first time I met you when you were putting shoes on summer. Remember that you opened the Vans, like the sun was glistening. You had long hair, I think, to here, and like it was like slow mo. Like you did the hair thing, and the sunlight was hitting it. And you put it on. I'm like, who is this guy? Like he's putting shoes on. Like literally, it reminded me of Jesus, like washing people's feet. And then literally later, it's like, oh, it's Metal Bro, man. And from that moment, always been connected to you. I mean,
Yeah.
we meet up, and it's just kind of like, man, seeing this journey, how beautiful it can be when I'm able to get out of my own way,
Yeah.
to do the internal work, to meet my own needs, so then I can go ahead and just give to this world the why I'm here.
Yeah.
It's a great journey.
So, with you, are you, if you were to give, if you're going to give someone who is currently in that state, I think there's a lot of sad, there's a lot of lonely and hurt people, advice on like mentorship, right? How would one, because I think they're so important. I know you say you had one, I have many.
Yeah.
I would just rather not. I think I know I'm a young pup. I may have lived an experienced life I'm 34, but I tend to relate and have friends that are much older than myself.
Mhm.
I think it's so important because with what I found with mentors and people that I respect, and I see the way they walk, I see the way just their energy, their world reflects it, um, and I want that around. And before I go and make a move, I make a phone call to somebody and say, hey, what would you do? And maybe I'll take it, put my own twist on it, so I just don't bump my head anymore. Like,
Yeah.
I still got to bump my head, but I'd rather try to avoid as much as possible. So I've loved having mentors around me. How would you suggest someone go and find, or how do you go and look for a mentor? Like,
So to me, it's just a simple thing as asking.
yeah,
Like it's gotten so big now, like masterminds and mentors. Back in the late '90s and early 2000s, I wasn't aware of this mentorship world. I mean, apprenticeship's always been around, but one of the earliest guys I remember meeting at the gym, and it was just by a conversation, and not like, "Hey, will you mentor me?" But just of these conversations, and then as you get to know the person, I'm like, "Man, you're a beautiful spirit. How did you figure this out?" And I don't think I've ever asked a person to mentor me.
yeah. It doesn't really come up like that.
I just
It's
developed
yeah,
relationships,
it's
and
true.
like another guy for business. I remember I was at a Tony Robbins event. This was like 2014, 16 something, and this guy was just on fire. He was one of the leaders, and we just started chatting, and we hit it off. And I'm like, man, can I give you a call? A lot of the stuff related. People who are crushing it in life want to be around other people who are crushing. Like anytime you get haters or people talking crap, they're not doing much.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like once I started figuring this out and seeing people that want to help each other, it's this beautiful. It's like, again, the whole water seeks its own level. And he was helping me and helping me, and we ended up talking weekly for probably like a year and a half. And he was brilliant in business. I never asked what he did for business, and one day it came out, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I sold my cyber security business for 200 million. So that's kind of how I know this stuff." I'm like, what? Now
Yeah,
all of a sudden, like what he was sharing with me was great, but once there was an actual like label to it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't been putting as much emphasis on this stuff. And another aha moment of like, what if I just viewed everybody as my teacher?
yeah,
What if I went around and just said, look, I can teach everybody something and everybody can teach me something. I'm an expert at something they may not be at, and they're going to be an expert at something I'm not at. So what if I just went through this world just being curious like a kid?
gosh,
And it has led to just this beautiful journey of having
wow,
so much fun, even in the pit of absolute shit and pain, of actually learning how to go, hey, I don't know how long this will last, but this is actually just as beautiful. And it is so tough sitting in some horrific stuff
mm,
and actually going, it's not the outcome I'm looking for. This is part of the journey. And then that's where I have found you get a lot of growth at the pits when you're not trying to just get out of it and you sit in it.
mm,
Scary though.
dang, so many things that resonated with me with what you were saying. Jesus. So to wrap this up, God, we got to do it another
I was
one.
just gonna say, hopefully version one. I mean, every
Damn.
time I still remember when we met at the lighthouse and had coffee for like 2 hours. I just love vamping with you, man. I get a
Jeez.
lot out of the conversations.
I mean, because we can go so much
Oh,
deeper.
we're still just tip of the
Oh
iceberg.
my
I
gosh, absolutely amazing. So, how do you, what do you want people to remember Mark as? You know, if like you were to leave the people your mark on this world.
Mark's Mark.
Yeah. What do you want to be remembered as?
My goal for however long I have on this earth, and you talk about what are our goals. So this is where now your viewers would be like, okay, he's officially crazy. One of my lifetime goals is to live to
Hey,
be
birds of a feather.
121 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my goal. I eat a certain way, I work out a certain way. So, with that in mind, my goal is to reach as many people to help them heal at a soulful and spiritual level, to be a beacon of light.
Mm.
So, and that's why one of the reasons why I wrote this book is because I started seeing, I mean, after working, I don't know, gosh, now I don't know, tens of thousands individually working with families and different people.
Wow.
Everybody felt alone. Like every single person goes, Mark, I feel so alone. Like you don't understand. I've done bad stuff or bad stuff's happened to me. And I'm going, I felt that way.
Mm.
I mean, in the book, I talk about when I was suicidal. Like literally, I left the house one day with the intention to take my life. That's how much pain I was in.
Mm.
And so, had I not gone through that, I wouldn't understand this stuff.
Mm.
So, of actually being able to sit next to someone and have a conversation where they go, how the hell do you know this? It's like you're in my head. I go, because it's part of the human experience, but we're so cut off, we don't understand that. And when we have these open conversations, this is one of the aspects I love and appreciate about AA, is being able to share with complete strangers.
Mm-hmm.
And within an hour, people go, you guys know more about me than my significant other. And that's why we work on stop lying and start telling the truth and just living truth no matter where you are. And it's so freeing.
Wow.
But that you're not alone. That's the message. You're not alone. You can heal if you choose to. It takes work, but it is so worth it.
Wow. Amazing. One more thing on your goal. Do you have for this year or coming up, do you have anything that comes to mind, a goal that, whatever it may be, this year?
Yep. So back to the cycle thing. So the 5 foundational freedoms. Every year, I have 4 huge goals for fitness, for faith, for family and friends, for finances, and for feelings. So depending on what theme, so we'll just go with feelings. My goal is to give a TED talk to help remove the stigma of addiction and to get out there that there are ways to heal. And this whole thing of seasonal purpose, of learning how to put your GPS or beacon on something and it guides you. When you don't know where to set your GPS, you can keep driving around forever and just wander aimlessly. But when you say, here's where I am, here's where I want to go, it maps out the journey for you. And then that's how we find people get long-term sobriety.
Yeah.
They have the foundations, they have the codes they live by, they do the daily work, and the fruit is a beautiful life, the ups and the downs without having to sedate or numb out or to withhold love.
Yeah. Well, amazing, man. I'm mind blown. We're definitely gonna have to do a second one.
Yeah, I would
Absolutely
love
amazing.
that. I've gotten a ton
Jeez.
out of this, and so I'm a huge fan of yours.
Thank you.
You've helped out in so many areas. You and your brother, and just both you guys, just your souls, and you're carrying that on now, man. It's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm trying, man. I know this thing has an expiration date on it, and I'm gonna kind of go and try everything I can. All right, love you, man.
Thank you.
Bye bye.